month, NASM is giving you free courses. That's right, free courses each month just for being part of the NASM family. Learn about everything ranging from nutrition to strength, weight loss to stress relief, and everything in between. Click the link in the bio for information and to claim your free course before they're gone.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Random Fit. I am Wendy Batts, and I'm here with my friend and colleague and co-host. I mean, you want me to keep going?
Mr. Go down the list.
So I'm telling you, right? Check. How are you?
Hello. Good. I'm ready for this one because I've got.
Wait, you're not ready for the others?
I'm ready for all of them, but for this one, it's very timely just because I've gotten a few new clients within the last 3 weeks on this topic.
Well, there you go. And today's topic is basically the knee. And people come and see us and they're like, oh, my knee is killing me, or I've had some knee issues, or I had a knee surgery not too long ago. And so we wanted to talk about why that possibly is and maybe ways to help work through some of, well, I don't want to say work through discomfort or injury or pain, because that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to help prevent it. And if you have some of it, we're trying to help get rid of it for you.
Right. Just because, I mean, the knee is something, it's a joint that a lot of time, I mean, a lot of us have had knee issues. And again, statistically, that's a good chance, especially if you're of the younger set, that you've had some kind of knee issue or you're currently experiencing some kind of knee issue, especially if you're involved with sports, which is, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's like I've gotten 2 new clients within the last few weeks just because of this joint. But, one of the biggest pieces, Wendy, I know we'll talk about this, is the fact that a lot of times it's not the knee's fault, right? So when we look at the knee, it's just, I don't want to say the dumb cousin to the joint above and below, but it's at the whim and whimsy of what's happening at the hip and the foot and ankle. So a lot of times we could be barking up the wrong tree, which in the case of these last 2 new clients is because they're trying to do all that they can with the knee to help the knee and the knee, right? But they done nothing to look at what's going on at the hip and the foot and ankle.
Well, yes. And I mean, there's been a bunch of research out there, and I know that some obviously with NASM that we talk about, but there was actually 2. There was one by Fulton et al. And Walden et al. So like in 2014, 2006. I mean, and there's a significant amount of articles out there, but they're saying that knee injuries can cause a decrease in the neural control of the muscles that stabilize basically the joints of the knee. And unfortunately, non-contact injuries are often the result of ankle or hip dysfunction. So to your point, above and below, guys, we need to work on above and below. And if the ankle or the hip joint begins to function improperly, then this is going to result in altered movement patterns and weight distribution that's going to force more compression and just force on the knee that could easily be minimized if we work on proper range of motion of the ankle and the hip, and making sure that the muscles that we always talk about, the hip flexors are in good position and the glutes are firing, and get those outer hip muscles to fire too. We can really look at people's alignment. I think we can make a significant difference because that stress and the impact, it's some scary stuff, especially when you think non-contact injuries. So there's a difference. Like if I'm walking and I hurt myself, that's a non-contact injury. Right. If you and I are playing football and you go into my knee, that's a contact injury. That's something that is unavoidable. The other stuff is avoidable. And I think if we talk about alignment in ways that maybe you guys can start to think about your own workouts, then there's going to be a good correlation of like, oh, maybe they've got a point there. This actually does feel better.
Right.
Maybe not.
Yeah, and you're mentioning these issues, and it goes from what I hear. It's like, well, my knees bother me when I'm going down the stairs, and that's all I feel when I have these knee issues. I mean, all the way to the point of you have ACL injuries, which depending on who you're reading or what you're reading, anywhere between 100 and 200,000 issues a year right? That need medical intervention. So it spans the spectrum when it comes to the knee issues, all the way, like from surgery, post surgery, and then all the way to, it only hurts me or bothers me when I do a certain thing. So not saying that one needs more attention to the other. If your knee's kind of barking at you, it's your responsibility to try and listen, and hopefully by the end of this episode, you have some things to keep in mind when it comes to, okay, well, how can I hold my fate in my own hands and control the destiny of what happens with my knee when it comes to alleviating some tension when they do happen, or to help progress any kind of rehab or post rehab situation that you have going on. Again, scope of practice here as a strength coach, personal trainer, doing anything regarding rehab is, again, can go beyond what I'm skilled or licensed for. But overall, what we're trying to do here is just give you some tools and ideas and concepts that you might need to consider if you haven't looked at, okay, what's going on outside of the knee.
Yes, and to your point, those of you guys that are just joining us, we're in Random Fit. I'm Wendy Batson here with Ken Miller. We're talking about training through injury, specifically dealing with the knee. And, I think you make a good point. Obviously, you need to, consult with your physician or, your athletic trainer, whoever you're working with, if this is something that's reoccurring and, you want to deal with your medical staff. However, if you come and see me, or you come and see Ken, or you go and you just want to look at yourself, first thing I would tell you to do is take off your shoes. If you don't have a trainer, do this at home. Take off your shoes and stand in front of a full-length mirror, and stand about shoulder to hip width apart with your feet straight. Lift your hands over your head and just do a few squats. And if you notice that your feet slightly turn out, even just a little bit, and you notice that your knees stay pointed forward, then think about if you over-exaggerated that. If your feet went out and your knees stayed forward and then you did a squat, think about all that compression and all that force that you're putting on that poor knee, and it's just not protected by using, your quads and your glutes and everything else that is above the knee. You're putting all your body weight basically on that knee joint, and it can really put a lot of pain on the medial or the inside of the knee, and it can put a lot of stress on your ACL, which are some of the tendons of the knee. And so that's or ligaments of the knee. And so that's one thing that you want to think about is, okay, how are you standing? How do you move? And think of it, the knee, and we talked about this, Ken, too, because the knee it's not a hinge joint, but it is a hinge joint. It moves in different directions, but it shouldn't significantly move like your shoulder, and so right. It's got to be able to move and have different forces and compressions from all different angles and all different planes of motion. However, you want it to really be seated correctly, because if something is pulling it, let's say, you've got really tight hip flexors in your TFL, which is like one of your upper hips that attaches to your IT band, and the IT band goes below the knee and attaches to that, it's going to like mainly pull your knee up. And then if your calves are really tight, it's going to be pulling it down. So this poor knee is getting kind of like a tug of war, and there's a lot of stress and strain to it, and you're not even doing anything. And now you add running, walking, climbing stairs, going downstairs. That's a lot of force that would cause that thing to get irritated. And so you really want to think of a corrective exercise strategy, so that way you can get those muscles to play nicely and leave that poor joint alone.
Yeah. And you're bringing up a really good point around, you have hamstrings that are tight, IT band as it crosses the knee, the calf complex as it comes up and crosses the knee from the ankle up into the femoral condyles, right? Just to get a little anatomical here.
Wow, look at you trying to sound all smart.
Femoral condyles. So those are those two notches or those two bumps you have in the back of the knee. But here's the thing, if you think about the knee joint, right? What's a joint? And I'm not talking about certain things, but if we're talking about a joint in the body, what we're all talking about is bones, where bones meet, right? So with the knee, it's your femur, and then you have your tibia, and you have where those two bones meet. And a lot of times when you have these knee issues, is that you've actually affected the space between those two bones. You've actually affected the relationship, because it's all about relationships, right? The relationship between the two bones, where ideally you want to have this ideal space, right? Which, again, going back to relationships, sometimes
you need
space is good.
You need space, y'all.
You need space. So when you have these muscles that are tight coming from above and coming from the bottom, they're actually affecting that space, pulling those two bones closer together, which will affect, again, as you said, Wendy, when you walk, right? When you're walking, you have impact. And if you don't have that space, you're going to affect how those two bones interact with each other. Either they can be hitting each other a little bit harder than they're meant to, or they can be meeting each other from a different angle than what they're meant to. Again, you have cartilage, meniscus, and those other components of the knee. But if those other components of the knee start having different demands on them other than what they're built for, that's when you're going to have problems. So one of the things I try, well, one of the metaphors I bring up with my clients is like, you have to look at the knee as a relationship. And when you have tightness and overactivity and underactivity, because it is about balance, you're affecting that relationship. So all we're really trying to do is create a better relationship between the bone that's above and the bone that's below, which is the femur and the tibia. But overall, it's about the relationship between the hip and the foot and ankle. So as you said, Wendy, when you're doing that overhead squat, you want to see that you have good relationship or ideal alignment between the foot, the toes, the knee, and the hips as you squat, because that's a reflection of the type of relationship that the knee has as a joint, but also as the hip and the ankle have to interact with each other, even though there's that little joint in between. So maybe I need to unpack some things here, but that's the way I like to look at how the knee works.
So those of you guys that are joining us on marital status and relationships here, we're also talking about the knee. But yes, you need to have good relationships between it, because you'll hear people say, oh, it's bone on bone, I've lost cartilage in there. And that's just wear and tear over time. And overuse with bad posture and improper movement patterns. I mean, unfortunately, it's going to be a cycle that you're doing daily unless you really try to think of proper alignment and ways to decrease some of the outside forces that shouldn't be there. And so one of the primary things that you'll see when somebody has some discomfort in their knee is that their foot will slightly turn out. And so one of the things that you can do about that, because I mean, we're telling you all this, but if you don't know what to do about it, then this is kind of a useless podcast, is, really try to think about rolling. I know, that's what we're going into. This is what you're going to have to do.
This is what you're going to do.
This is a way to help, is, spend some time using a foam roller or some kind of percussion device that we had talked about. So like a Hypervolt, for example, and spend some time rolling the outside of that calf, the back of your leg. And what that will do is anytime you find a tender spot, you're going to sit, marinate it until that starts to feel better. That's kind of decreasing some of the overactivity that's placed in that particular muscle that's causing that foot to turn out. And think about, if your foot's turning out, that's shortening a lot of those little muscles and everything on the outside of the knee. And you want to try to get better length there because, again, if the knee's coming in, the inside thigh is pulling it the other way. So again, think about, Ken just talked about, you want everything to properly line up. If you've got your calf kind of pulling it down and out and your adductors or your inside muscles, because of weakness in your hip, pulling it up in the other direction, it's just holding on for dear life. And that's why we see so many things happening. And so just spend some time foam rolling that area and then stretching it. And the best way to stretch it, just take a step back like you're going to do kind of a lunge up against the wall, slightly turn your toe in. That will really focus on the outside of that calf complex. Hold it for 20 to 30 seconds. Do that a few times. You can slightly bend the knee to get your soleus, which is the other muscle like inside of that ball of your calf, which is your gastroc. And it can really, really help. Try to, like on the lower limb, help with that. And I know, Ken, you were probably going to talk about the upper portion of that. Moving up.
Yeah, moving up the chain. Now, again, you have the hips you want to look at, as far as the rotation that is happening or not happening at the hip. So a lot of times too, it's having that immobility. So if you're talking about, Wendy, I think you mentioned the adductor complex a little bit. So inside the inner thigh, laying prone or on your stomach, and you have your knee out to the side or your thigh out to the side, where you're exposing your inner thigh to either a ball or a roller, a Viper maybe, so if you can get some vibration in there to help enhance and amplify the recovery process or the relaxation that happens in there. So what you just described, Wendy, with the calf complex, you can do with the inner thigh complex. Because again, sitting down, again, you don't have to. I know the context in which we kind of introduced the episode was about athletes, but you don't have to be an athlete to have a knee issue. A lot of times the knee issue is just because you haven't been doing anything, you haven't strengthened the right muscles, and a lot of the muscles complementing that are shortened and overactive. So like the inner thigh, the adductor complex, that as an example, need to get addressed. So I'll tell you, Wendy, just with the foam rolling as well as the stretching, a lot of times when I've had clients that come to me because they have issues with the knee, and that's where that's the squeaky wheel. With flexibility alone, just working on flexibility, getting the muscles to kind of calm down through self-myofascial technique, and then doing a simple stretch, as you said, Wendy. There's been many times where it's just foam roll the calf, foam roll the inner thigh, standing calf stretch, standing adductor stretch. And I mean, not saying it's the miracle cure for everybody, but there's been a lot of cases where you've had a significant decrease in tension, and or even just the discomfort goes away altogether in some cases. That it's all because we're just too tight and we don't move. We're overactive and we just have that immobility. But once you give the foot and ankle a chance to move, once you give the hips a little bit of a chance to move, that's going to change how the knee is going to move mechanically. And a lot of times, I'm not saying this is going to be it for everybody, but at least short-term effects of incorporating a solid flexibility and assessed flexibility routine is enough to take a good amount of stress off of the knee. Once you give the hips a chance to do what they want to do or need to do, and you give the foot and ankle a chance that they want and need to do, then that takes a whole lot of stress off of the knee itself. So a lot of times flexibility is going to be the key, but because we are talking about training through injury with the knee, a lot of people think, okay, I feel so good, I'm just going to do what I've been doing. Well, guess what? That's probably what got you into trouble to begin with. So we need to address flexibility and don't just go back to squatting, deadlifting, and all the heavy other stuff. But there is a strengthening component that does have to, kind of solidify and give the hips and the foot and ankle the integrity they need to do all the heavy stuff that you need.
Yep. And that's, I mean, to your point, we can loosen things up, but if we don't strengthen it, and the importance of this, guys, is think about this: an overactive muscle is going to pull a joint out of whack, and then the weak muscles allow it. So if we actually try to get more length back into those muscles that were really tight, that were kind of pulling it, more into whatever position it wanted to be in, if we don't strengthen the other side or strengthen the muscles that are going to help with that newfound length, then it's going to go right back to what Ken was saying. So, okay, so we told you to think about rolling and stretching your calves, your adductors, even your TFL. And your TFL is basically the change pockets. So if you've got front pockets, that little bitty pocket there, you put those little, I don't even know why, but I guess we just call it change pockets. But, just take your roller, spend some time on that, because that TFL is what blends into your IT band. And because of where that IT band, it starts on the bottom part of the outside knee, that muscle can attribute to a lot of some of the discomfort as well. And, when you hear people talk about runner's knee, or they've got something like IT band syndrome, just by alleviating those three areas with rolling and stretching, that's step one. But now you want to strengthen the outer hip. So I always talk about the lateral tube walks. You guys are going to hear me say that forever. Side lying leg lifts. So the Jane Fonda lifts that, back in the day, those are really crucial. And then doing like bridges and things to really get the glutes to activate, as well as opening up the hips. So, big one for the bridges, if with your stretching, those are just some of the strengthening things that you can do. But, a lot of these things, because of like we have said, if you don't really focus on the two main joints that are causing some of this stress and compression to the knee, then you can work on the knee all day, but like it really has no mind of its own. It's being dictated by the ankle and the hip. And so even though, people are like, oh, I dress the ankle, it could be coming from the hip. Or if you dress the hip, it could be coming from the ankle. You want to really make sure that you address both, because then you're going to have such a better outcome long term. And I mean, we can go through some of these stats that I've seen on, you know, especially in adolescence. We always talk about everything happening in the senior population. And in this case, it's not the case.
Yeah. And, you know, when we talk about adolescence, one of the things that comes to mind, although by the time I met Robert, he was already, I think he was 67 years old. But what I can't help but think about him as a, you know, at the time that I knew him, he was 67 years old. And he told me that he had a knee issue since he was 18.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. Because what initiated the conversation was, you know, I noticed, hey, and I noticed you got a little bit of a limp there, buddy. What's going on? Is there anything I can help you with? It's like, no, it's something I've lived with for a while. And it turns out, as a 67-year-old, he's had this issue since he was 18. He just learned to live with it. Right, which broke my heart. This was early on in my personal training career. I haven't really gone through corrective exercise or, yeah, as my background, or even learned the training model that we use today. But it just broke my heart in the fact that, okay, here's a guy that's lived, you know, 40 plus years, right, with pain, and he just kind of worked his way around it. And of course, diving deeper into that conversation, he's also expressed low back issues, and you know that's haunted him on and off. And I think about today's, you know, kids today, today's youth, that if, you know, I mean, you and I are talking about it, just kind of rolls off of our tongue. We've seen it. We've helped, you know, hundreds of people at least. But if you think about guys like Robert, I think about and I reflect on guys like Robert who are in their later years that have just learned to live with it, and to know that there are these steps that you can take to help. I mean, if he felt 50% better, if he felt 10% better, that would be an improvement. So for him, it'd be, you know, walking down the stairs, definitely something that he just did not look forward to. Why he got a 2-story house, I don't know. But, you know, going downstairs, something that he did not want to do. Right. But so once he was downstairs, he was at a point where, you know, I'm just going to stay down here for a while, to where he started putting, you know, his clothes, his laundry, you know, so things he needed to change into were downstairs, and he'd only go up for bed. Right. So as you go through the years, and if you go through time and you're just learning to live with it, you know, it's only going to get worse. Right. So with small steps, like we're talking about already, you have to relax the muscle, get the muscle to relax with your foam rolling, lengthen it. Right. Again, more relaxation through the stretching. And then, you know, you need to solidify and retrain the nervous system, right, with, you know, with some strengthening to help, like I said earlier, with the integrity and stability of the knee, so that once you have that range of motion, we can now keep that range of motion better, because we've added a little bit of a reinforcement with stronger hips or a stronger foot and ankle to help with keeping that range of motion. Because one of the things you and I both know, Wendy, is the fact that with stretching and flexibility, if you don't do anything to strengthen around the joint as well, you have what we would call naive range of motion, meaning you have all this flexibility and range of motion, your brain doesn't know what to do with it. So if your brain doesn't feel safe moving in all these planes of motion, or with this new range of motion, it's going to take it back, because it's like, I can give you that, but I don't trust you with it. And by that, I mean, I can give you all that range of motion, but I can't trust you with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and tighten things up again. That's why the strengthening, all the glute work that you mentioned, the bridges, the tube walking, are so important. And I think that's one of those pieces that goes missing, because they feel so good after stretching and foam rolling that they go, hey, forget everything else, right? Forget everything else. I'm just going to go do what I'm doing because I feel so good.
Yep. And those of you guys that are just joining us, we're talking about training through injuries, specifically with the knee. I'm Wendy Batts here with Ken Miller. And I mean, Ken, you made some great points. And that's why I know with us, you know, being trainers and manual therapists and stuff, I mean, we're super, super passionate when somebody comes and says they have got, I've got this discomfort or irritation or this injury that I've been, dealing with, and again, with clearance, and they're free to work out. I mean, obviously we need to make sure that they're okay to work out with you, but there are so many things that we can do. And so, we've talked about what you can roll and stretch, and we talked about some strengthening, but one thing to think about too, and especially for me and Ken as parents, guys, if you look at the research, one thing that I found really, it's one of these, we talked about 100 to 200,000 ACL injuries annually. These are something that's highly reported. But if you look at like over 10 years of research, knee injuries in the United States alone presented to the emergency departments revealed that those from 15 to 24 years of age had the highest injury rate. And these knee injuries were reported to account for 60% of high school sports related surgeries. And female athletes were reported to be 4 to 6 times more likely to sustain a major knee injury. And so when you think about that, me being a female, I mean, I have a son, so I mean, I definitely want to make sure that he's tracking well and that he's moving well. And I'm probably like crazy because I'm like, oh my goodness, his foot's turning out. And I'm like, he's five, like, let him be. But you want to start looking at this because 15 to 24 years, I mean, it brings up to your client who he's had that since he was 18. And we really want to start to think about our youth and ways that we can protect it. So if you are a mom or a dad and you're listening to this, which we hope you are, start thinking about, ways to really try to help your kids from being one of these statistics. Because if you notice that their feet turn out a lot, you notice that their hips are weak, or they've got a big arch in their back from sitting at school, there are things that you can do. And that's when you want to reach out to a trainer or reach out to, maybe more of our podcast, because we've given you a ton of different things to do with some of this stuff. But you want to try to start your kids on some of these foam rolling and stretching techniques, as well as strengthening. You can do it at home. Doesn't take a lot of money. It's something they can do every single day. Research says every single day. It's only going to help realign the body. So just kind of be smart in your choices. Try to think, if you notice that this is going on with your kids or yourself, try to avoid jumping and stuff until you start working on proper alignment mechanics. Because if you're not careful, you can easily, unfortunately, tear your ACL, which is so commonly done. And that can happen when you turn and grab your keys. If you're not used to training that way and you've got some weak muscles, as soon as you start doing some movement and turning, you can easily, unfortunately, that knee can say, I've had it. When, if you start to look at this stuff early on, you could avoid that.
Yeah. So, and again, and you actually really hit close to home there, because, what we just, my kids just finished cross country. And oh man, yeah. I mean, and that's all the way from kindergarten to 8th grade, and watching these kids run around, I'm like, you can only help so many people. But first and foremost, I didn't hear one complaint of any knee issues and things like this. But if it's one of those things where if you don't, there's a couple dads, I've talked to about, how their kids are running and things like that, and no pain, great, let's keep it that way. And here's some things that we can do to offset that. So like you said, Wendy, it's like there are some habits that we can start to get into earlier on. Like, no problem with, you get the kids dressed, ready for school. Hey, let's do 10 floor bridges and 10 single leg RDLs. And all right, go ahead, go to school, right? There's things that you can do. But with this cross country team, I mean, you see kids running of all different styles and techniques, but there were a handful in there that were very, it's like, we got to keep an eye on this one person, just because that knee, you think they're running 2 miles, you're talking, or half a mile for one age group, another mile for another age group. That's every step they take, is that knee is kind of diving in. So if they're trying to increase the speed, or they're trying to increase the distance, that's more volume on a bad motor pattern. So that's where, yeah, go ahead.
What you're saying is, every step you take, every move you make, you'll be watching them?
I'll be watching you. Yeah, exactly. I love the police. So from that standpoint, cue the music, Eric. So from that vantage point, if you're healthy, you feel good, feel better, stay healthy, and incorporate some of these strategies, because no reason why what we're talking about has to be just taken in the context of pain and discomfort. If you feel good, keep doing what you're doing. but add these things in there and move even better.
Preventive, be proactive and help yourself preventative. Is that the word?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. Just do it.
Just do it. All right. So having knee problems it's not a death sentence and that you can't do anything, right? It's just, hey, there are some things that you can do. If it's lingering and ongoing and very intense, go see somebody about it. But once you get clearance, come back, foam roll, stretch.
Do you have to let it linger?
And you know, your cranberries. I love it. You didn't think I'd get that, did you?
Oh my goodness. Well, with that, today was fun. And to your point, there are things that you can do. Hopefully this will be helpful for you, and try some of these strategies.
Awesome. Wendy, thanks so much. I'm always pulling out some good nuggets from you. And you said a couple things here and there that I really took from beginning to end, chock full of information. So everybody, thank you so much for listening to us here on Random Fit on this episode of Training Through Injury with the Knee. If you like what we're doing, come back for more. Like, follow, subscribe, comment, let us know what you want to listen to. And until next time, take care and be well.